Hello and welcome to Speaking Concretely. I'm your usual host, Adam Auer, but this month I'm stepping aside to make way for a special guest host, CAC's Vice President of Public Affairs and Advocacy, Martha Murray. Hi, Martha.
Hi, Adam.
As you may know, March 8th marks International Women's Day, and we wanted to take this opportunity to celebrate the incredible women leaders who are transforming the cement and concrete industry. I'll be back next month, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoy this special episode on an important and inspiring topic. So over to you, Martha, and have a great time hosting Speaking Concretely this month.
Thanks, Adam. I'm Martha Murray, the Vice President of Public Affairs at the Cement Association, and I'm thrilled to be guest hosting a special edition of Speaking Concretely for International Women's Day. Today, I'm joined by two women leaders in the cement and concrete industry. With me is Monica Manolas, Region President at Ash Grove East and Cement Association Board Member, and Andrea McChesney, Executive Director of the Canadian Concrete Masonry Producers Associations. Good morning to both of you.
Hi, Martha. Bonjour.
Hello and bonjour, Martha.
I'm really excited to have this conversation today, as I think it's so important to raise the profile of women in the cement and concrete industry, as well as attract more women to the industry. However, I also believe that in order to achieve that, we need to hear more about the experience of those who have been in the industry for a while and what opportunities exist for those who might be considering it. So with that, we will just kick it off. Why don't we start with each of you telling us a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got involved in the industry. Let's start with you, Monica.
Sure. So Martha, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to do this podcast. I am passionate about women's leadership in the cement and concrete industry, and am more than willing to participate in things like this, because I agree with exactly what you said. We need to raise awareness. We need to be more attractive as an industry to attract women to the industry. And then we also need to advocate and sponsor those women once they enter. So a little bit about me. I started in this industry over 3 decades ago, if you can believe it. And right out of school, first professional position was as a chemist in a cement plant. And quite frankly, didn't know what I was getting myself into, but fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the manufacturing process on the cement side, but went on to work in concrete pipe, ready mix, block, precast, all parts of the concrete side as well, and have been very fortunate to be able to kind of sample a little bit of everything that our industry has to offer.
That's great. That's a great background. Over to you, Andrea.
Sure. And thank you again for inviting us. To echo what Monica said, I'm also very passionate about women coming into our industry and more important, perhaps staying in our industry. And I think that these things are integral to that. I don't have as long of a tenure as Monica does in industry, so I'm just about that 2-decade mark. I started in aggregates and wound my way over to concrete block. So very similarly, I started right out of school and actually in the recycled aggregates when it was just starting to take off here in Ontario. And I also fell completely in love with it. So you just can't leave once you're here. It's fantastic. So thank you for inviting me.
That's great. Thank you. I guess, the cement and concrete industry has traditionally been very male dominated. And I would say even when I joined just about a decade ago, it was even more male dominated than it is today. But what challenges do you feel you have faced as a female, and how did you overcome them? And I'll throw that one over to Monica.
Yeah. So I have to be honest, having been in this industry my entire career, it also has mirrored my personal journey through life, right? So having children, getting married, all of those things. And I would say that has probably been the biggest challenge. And it's the question I get the most when I talk to young engineers who are thinking about going into the industry is how do you balance all of that? It's actually been a very welcoming industry in terms of colleagues wanting to hear from a female voice, hear from women, welcoming to women. I have not faced closed doors in that respect. If anything, I credit most of my mentorship to male mentors who have been wanting to get women more involved and wanting to have more women. But I will tell you, it is difficult for them to believe and understand what we're going through as we journey through life on the personal side. So I can remember, running through airports with breast milk and trying to find a place to pump, and how am I going to make it to my child's baseball game, or other out events when I'm halfway across the country, and things like that. So my journey has been really trying to find that balance, and one of the biggest things when you ask about how to overcome them has been being very vocal about what I needed and having those discussions directly with my mentors, my bosses, my supervisors, and trying to get that empathy, because it is quite different for men. We're seeing more and more men modeling that behavior, but I think that's very important. And I tell now that and I didn't talk too much about this on your first question, I'm region president. So I have 5 cement plants, and half of the country, both countries, U.S. and Canada. And I tell my male leaders, it is extremely important for your female leaders to hear from you that you are taking the time for the personal side, that you are just as invested in co-parenting if that's what they've chosen to do, and other things, right? Taking time for education outside of work, and extracurricular activities, and all those things. Because if we don't model those things, it's going to be very difficult to do exactly what Andrea said, which is keep and retain women. So that's kind of been the biggest one, believe it or not. Not so much dealing with men in the workplace or a male way of thinking. It's been more about what happens outside of work.
Absolutely. I think that's a challenge that many of us as professional women in the workplace have to juggle. So actually, I'm just going to just sort of detour off our questions and pass one over to Andrea as well, to just ask you, how do you balance? I know you have a child as well. How do you balance that work-life responsibility?
Oh, you have the impression that I'm balancing. That's great. That's awesome. So it's working. The perception is working. Um, it's a delicate balance for sure. Um, to Monica's point, so talking about my scope is Canada wide as well. So I have a significant travel component. And in there, just for fun, you're balancing things like time zones. So you're saying goodnight to your child when it's, you're just heading out for dinner. But I think the balance has been the biggest challenge for me in this space was probably giving myself license to ask the questions. So giving myself license, as Monica said, to advocate for myself, to ask for the time, to ask to do something, because I think sometimes for me as a female in this industry, you feel a little bit like you don't want to vocalize it. You can be equal to your male peers, but we're just a little different. We have different needs. We have different demands in our life. And again, a lot of it, we're seeing that balance, right, with the co-parenting. And I would say, at least for us in our association, we see that all the way across the board. It's not uncommon for someone to say that they don't want to miss someone's first day of school. That's important, and it's important to them. So it's important to all of us. And so, yes, the challenge for me was just getting up the nerve to ask for those things. But once I learned to trust in that space and that they support me no matter what, it breeds such a better culture at work.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I guess, to add on to that one, what have you seen as how has it shifted on how women are perceived in the industry over the years, and what still needs to change? And maybe we'll just start with Andrea with that one.
I think a lot of it has shifted. It's hard to definitively answer that question. I was thinking about that as we were heading into this. And I think that it's shifted, but I have to be completely transparent and say that I feel that I've always been in a very fortunate position. And I didn't face a lot of those misperceptions or struggles between genders. I've been supported at work. My mentors have advocated for me and my managers. And one of the things that I think, and this is always a difficult question for me to answer, I would challenge us to shift the perception from talking about how hard it is for being a female in construction, just shifting a little bit to thinking about the opportunities that we have here and the growth that we're experiencing and the diversity that's happening and the inclusivity. So are there challenges? Absolutely, but there's going to be challenges in any space. Right? It's how we handle them and how you rise up to handle them. And again, circling back, once I was confident enough, once I was brave enough to make the choice to ask for the time or to ask for the balance, then the floodgates open, right? And the support starts. So I think just shifting a little bit into how awesome it is to be a female in this industry.
Great. Monica, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that certainly there's been a shift in perception on the type of work that women would be interested in. So I can't tell you how many times early in my career I would go to a conference or a meeting, and people would automatically assume I was in a staff role. Like, are you in HR? Are you in finance? And no, I'm in operations. Oh, really? Why would you want to do that? And how many men get asked that question, right? So that is no longer the case as much anymore, and so that has shifted. But I do think we still all hold some unconscious bias in that regard. Even for female engineers, the questions can be around, do you want something that's more office based, and not just for the personal side of things, but just for preference, and so I think that still needs, I think there are people who would rather have more office based work, female and male, and those that love being out in the field, love being in an operational role, and love being in leadership roles. I think that's also something that we as women need to do some self-reflection on, and really, push if we see that there are females in our organization that are interested in leadership, that are interested in operational roles. How can we set them up for success and be very intentional about it?
Andrea, more generally, what's a common misconception that people have about our industry?
So if you're talking about our industry as a whole, I would say, for me, it goes back to the sustainability and the carbon piece, right? So that misperception about how carbon intensive our industry can be, we're doing a lot in every sector on our sustainability, super transparent carbon accounting, right? And being upfront about our operational footprint as well as our embodied and the different ways that we're going to continue to shift and drive towards that net zero. Um, yeah, building out of concrete is going to build a stronger, more resilient, sustainable space. I think it's just as our messaging starts to all come together across the different sectors, truly seeing the benefit in concrete all the way around and not simply dismissing it because of its misperception around its carbon intensity.
Now, back to both of you, and I'll start with Monica. Did you have a mentor or role model who helped you navigate your career? And how important is mentorship for women in this industry?
So the answer is yes. I would not even be in, not only in the position I'm in, but in the industry had it not been for mentors throughout. From the person who hired me, right? He saw something in me, and when I went on my walkabout to the cement plant, my reaction to what was happening, and seeing this big industry that I knew nothing about, by the way. I'd never been to a cement plant before. And he saw that spark, and he really, pushed me to take on the challenge, because I had always seen myself as more of a kind of a scientist in a laboratory. I started out as a chemist. to my first leadership role was because my mentor, a different mentor, said, I really see you as a leader. And I had never thought about being a leader. To be very honest, I thought I was going to be an individual contributor. I had not, in my schooling, because of the bias back then, I had not really been exposed to leadership as a career path. It had been more around science and individual contributions. And he really opened up my mind. I still meet with my mentors, even the ones who have retired now, which most of them have. But fortunately, now I'm using people early in career as mentors to do reverse mentorship. But I still feed back to them kind of, here's the top 5 things you taught me and how impactful it was. And if I were to say those things have made more of a difference in my career than even my experiential learning, and, just showing up and asking for what you want and advocating. One of the things I specifically was told by one of my sponsors was, next time you are in this situation, make sure you speak to your sponsor, advocate, whoever it is that's going to be in a room when you're not there, and ask them exactly what you're looking for. Tell them what you want. Don't, be very clear. And without that instruction, I think there are 3 or 4 opportunities that I would not have gotten had it not been for that advice. So I think all of us owe it to our industry to be a mentor to women and men in our industry that we see that have potential, and being very intentional about kind of those nuggets of wisdom that we pass on that we think that made a difference for us and that we think can make a difference for them.
Andrea?
I echo everything that Monica said. So very similar experiences, mentors throughout my career. They've been absolutely instrumental. So do I believe that a mentor is critical to success? 1,000 times yes. And I would not be where I am beyond a reasonable doubt without my mentors. I've made it a practice to always have 2. So one in industry and one out. So I get different perspectives. And just, you can get a little caught up in what we all do, right? And so it's nice to see a fresh perspective from outside industry, someone who can coach you on those pieces. And I think on the mentorship piece, the biggest piece is 2 things. One is not being afraid to go and find your own mentor or form your own mentorship. It's not always that we're fortunate enough to be in a company that aligns you or just assigns you a mentor or supports you to find one. I was fortunate and came into our industry through a leadership development program. So they very much supported and advocated that. And once I picked up on the mentorship, it was great. But over the course of my career, I've just approached people and asked and formed the relationship. And the second thing is seeking out a mentor who is comfortable with having the constructive conversations with you. So there's going to be difficult parts as you learn and grow, and the growing pains in a career, but having a mentor who can sit down and give you that constructive feedback as well as the positive feedback. So mentors they have a special place in my heart, and I totally agree with Monica that we need to continue to do that for the next generation.
Is there, just putting you on the spot a bit, is there one piece of advice that a mentor gave you that was particularly impactful?
I don't know how into it you guys are, but body language is a massive thing, especially at work and what you do. And so when I was young and I was just starting out, we'd been at this, we'd bring our mentors to this day, and we had a whole team building day. And halfway through the day, she looked over at me and was like, "Do you want to be here?" I was like, "Of course I want to be here. This is great. What do you mean?" She's like, "Cool. Why are you slouching?" I didn't even realize that that was something I was doing. I didn't realize that I wasn't being an active participant in the audience because I was so busy learning that I wasn't necessarily thinking about what my body language was telling the room. And I think in a lot of situations since then, I've caught myself, when you walk into a room, you stand up a little bit straighter, even if it's an intimidating room. That's what you need to, I don't know, showcase yourself. It speaks to the room before you've even spoken to the room. And I think just keeping that with me and continuing to work on it has been, I think, helpful to this point.
That's great. Great piece of advice. Okay, Monica, how can we get more diverse voices, including women, involved in the industry? And is there anything right now that Ash Grove's doing to be more inclusive?
Yes. So I think when it comes to attracting people to our industry, it's all about the culture that we create, right? And are we listening? Are we drawing voices in? I think especially this next generation, they want to be part of the solutions, some of the solutions to some of the problems that Andrea was talking about before around sustainability. I mean, this can be something that people can get very passionate about and will definitely draw them in. But we need to make room for their viewpoints, right? And I think it's definitely about listening, bringing in their voices, listening to them even when the experience may not be there to quite understand everything that's going on. But I think there's a lot of value in still drawing those ideas out. And so we have to be a culture that listens, an industry that listens, and quite frankly, we historically have not been, right? We're probably one of the slowest changing industries that there is. The last few years that has started to change, and we're seeing that pick up. And that's why I do think we're probably getting more traction on involving women and other people that have historically not been in our industry. In Ash Grove, I would say we're definitely trying to attack it from that cultural perspective. Inclusion and inclusivity, I think, is more than just asking what you think. It's also acting on what you hear, right? And so the intentionality behind that, I think, is very important. Where there are good ideas, out of the box thinking that we can act on quickly and have some, quick gains, quick wins, I think helps definitely, especially for that more diverse audience. I think it makes them feel like they can have an impact. And so it's worth staying and investing their career time, their energy in our industry.
Right. I think you raised a great point that, it's been a really exciting time for the industry with lots of changes, innovation, focus on sustainability, really picking up speed. So I'm wondering, starting with you, Andrea, what does the future of women in the cement and concrete industry look like to you? And where do you see the most opportunities for growth and change?
I think the future of women in cement and concrete looks bright. And I think that the challenges that are coming at us as an industry on all the levels, including the sustainability piece, the challenges themselves are diverse, right? So they need a diverse workforce to be able to tackle them. And if you know me, you know I love a good collaboration. So I feel that women are very supported in this industry. And you just, there's something for everyone. You can find something that you love. So similar to Monica's point, I came out of school with a business degree and I ended up in an aggregate quarry. So, you do different things all the time, but that's part of the beauty of what we do is that you can do literally anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Monica, anything to add to that?
Yes, I agree. I actually had the exact same phrase, "The future is bright," in my mind when you said it. But I think that we do need to do more to bring those opportunities forward, especially for the next generation of women. I think getting ourselves out of our biases around how we've always done things and what is possible is the challenge for all of us, for the people who are currently running things. And I think I can remember we were doing a problem solving exercise about a particularly dangerous area in the plant, and we were all coming up with how we could overcome the potential danger. So hot material, we can wear this kind of PPE, we can put up signage, we can, you know, potentially have, tape it off while the temperatures are high. And I remember, just because we forced the issue of let's hear from everybody here, we get to the youngest, newest intern, and she said, well, why do people have to walk through there at all? Why do you have a stairwell there? Why not just move the stairwell and not have anybody walking through that area? And everybody just kind of went, yeah, that's a great idea. So here we are coming up with all these engineered solutions, and it is so obvious to her, like, just don't even go there, right? Don't have a person have to be faced with the danger. So I mean, that's one example of a million we could give, right? But I think those type of opportunities and that type of thinking, while anybody could come up with it, I think is something that that we can be more open to, and we can hear from those more diverse voices. But we have to force the issue. We cannot just sit back and wait for them to speak up.
That's where the pieces kind of come together for me, and what Monica's talking about, and building up that next generation, and or just people new to the industry, basically. But it's more often than not, when you talk to someone in our industry, from my experience, they've had a non-linear career path. And that is fantastic in so many ways, because it allows people to land where they truly want to be, and a well-rounded experience. But without a clear career trajectory, it can be a little bit of an uncomfortable space, I think, for people. So ensuring that we're aligning people or connecting people with mentors and supporting them in the business, it makes that little bit of uncomfortableness to get to the awesome space a little easier in the transition, because a lot of us kind of zigzagged around before we landed in where we ultimately wanted to be.
Great point. Okay, so my final question for today: what career advice would you have for any women looking to get involved in the cement and concrete industry? And I'll start with Monica.
So first of all, you made a great decision in wanting to get involved in the cement and concrete industry. But I would give actually some of the same advice that I have been given and that resonated with me the most, which is, you have a viewpoint to give. Make your own space for that viewpoint. Show up, right? Be there. You can't get involved and you can't have opportunities if you're not willing to try new and different things. And that's not always easy. I will say, I can remember my early days. I was a supervisor on the night shift, right? And there I am in a plant that only runs with 4 or 5 people in the middle of the night, and I was 21 years old and very scary, right? But I was willing to do it and to show up despite that, and had never been in that situation before, whereas many men at the same age probably had to have similar experiences, right? It's just I was more protected and shielded as a child. So show up, try things that are out of your comfort zone. And then I would say ask for what you need, right? So that goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of family and extracurricular and those things that are important to nourish your soul and your being and your personal development, but also ask for what you want. And I think this is very important. So few of my people, male or female, will tell me what it is they want in their careers, what they want in the future. And I will tell you, my biggest opportunities have been from planting seeds of what I want decades before I got it. And the decision maker remembered the conversation that I had. So one quick story. There was a board forming actually in Florida, and it was block related. There was going to be a penny a block assessment to spend on block promotions in Florida, in the state of Florida, so that more block would be used. Andrea, probably something that you have worked on in your career as well. And the board that was going to spend this money, and it was millions of dollars, $3-4 million a year to be spent. The board was going to be made up of the heads of all the different companies that were putting the money into this. And I went to my boss and I said, well, I know you're going to probably be sitting on that board, but I just want you to know, if you ever feel that you're too busy, I would love to do that. Right? I wasn't even in the block business when I told him that. Fast forward years later, he gets himself into a situation where he's too busy. He can't do it. He remembers our conversation. He nominates me. All of a sudden, I'm sitting on a board with all the presidents and owners of the largest companies in the state of Florida. And I get to meet them, interact with them. That's what leads to my next opportunity. So ask for what you want, not just what you need.
That's a great story. Andrea, over to you.
I mean, I feel like it's similar to the mentorship question, right? How do you drill down to just a couple pieces of advice for someone? First and foremost, I would say find something you're passionate about, find something you love. And I mean, really love, because there's going to be long days and there's going to be hard days. There's going to be long, hard days. And knowing that you're doing something that makes a difference. So quick story. I was walking home from school with my son. He was 5, and the weather turned unpredictably, like it's been known to do increasingly these days. And there was, hail. May, just weird time for hail, very bad weather. You could hear the lightning, the thunder. And my son looked up at me very confidently from under his umbrella, and he was like, "That's fine, Mom, right? Because we live in a big block house." And I just knew that instinctively he knew he was safe because he was living in a concrete home. And that is what is going to help us as we move forward. And seeing that through the eyes of my child, it was, when you're on the 3rd canceled flight of a business trip or something, it makes you believe in what you do. And I think that's important. Quick hits, I think, similar to what Monica was saying, always show up. If you're 5 minutes early, you're already late. Do every job. You learn some of the most of the things from the jobs that you might instinctively think that, I have a degree or I have these letters behind my name and I don't need to be doing that. But some of the coolest and most rewarding experiences and the things I developed the most from were those kinds of things. And the last thing I think that's most important is build your dream team. So whatever that looks like, making sure that you have a mentor, your peers, the people around you, your allies. As we go through things, we're stronger together, and it's easier done when you've built your dream team.
That's great. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you to both of you for your insights and your advice. I think it's been fantastic. Do either of you have any final parting words before we sign off?
I mean, I have one question, and I don't want to put you on the spot because you're the question asker today. But what advice would you give?
I actually was thinking about 3 things that I would say to someone, not dissimilar from what both of you have raised. First of all, have passion, love what you're doing. Second, be authentic, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself, because I think that's super important. And thirdly, show up and put in the hard work. Just work hard. So I would say those are sort of 3 simple. There's lots of them, but the sort of top 3 for me.
That's awesome. And thank you too for having us today. It was great.
It's been fun. It's been wonderful. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. And thanks to the Cement Association of Canada. We really appreciate everything that CAC does for women. Just having this podcast on International Women's Day is a good reflection of the culture that is that you advocate for and allowed to thrive, and making this a priority for our industry and putting it at the top of your list is much appreciated as well. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. You have a whole team of collaborators and allies, and you guys are fantastic. We appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you to our audience for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and follow our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We hope to see you next time.